In sports history, you come across legends, players that redefine the game. In some cases, you have players that try their skills in more than one sport. Deion Sanders was a player that did all those things. What type of history did Sanders make even before he made it to the pros? What made Sanders so good at more than one sport? Find out the answers to those questions and much more on this episode of Football Craze. Also, stay to the end and see which other athletes Deion can say that he shares this type of multi-sport greatness. What type of history did Deion make before he even got to college? Deion was born in Fort Myers, Florida. Sanders attended North Fort Myers High School, where he lettered in 3 different sports. He played on the baseball, basketball, and football teams, where he made All-State in each sport. In 1985, Sanders was named to the Florida High School Association All-Century team, which selected the top 33 players in the 100-year history of high school football in the state. That is just the beginning of the type of history that Deion would be a part of in his life. In the 1985 MLB draft, Deion was drafted by the Kansas City Royals, but declined to join the organization. Instead, Deion attended Florida State University. Deion played 3 different sports at college. Sanders played baseball, football, and ran track. Some of the career highlights for Sanders on the college gridiron were that he had 14 interceptions as the lead cornerback. He also had 3 of those interceptions in crucial bowl games. Finally, out of those 14 interceptions, he returned one for 100 yards. Usually, if a player is involved in playing many different sports, he probably isn't playing more than one position in that one given sport. In Deion's case, he played more than one position and made history doing it. At Florida State, Sanders was also a punt returner and setting the school's record for most punt return yards. He finished his career with 126 punt returns for 1,429 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as 14 interceptions, returning them for 287 yards and 3 scores. In 1995, Florida State retired his jersey. There is an old saying, you can't be at 2 places at once. Well, Deion was going to test this saying more than one time in his life with great success. The first time was in Florida State and his participation in the track team and baseball team. In 1987, Columbia, South Carolina was hosting both the Metro Conference Baseball and Track Championships simultaneously. Sanders not only played in the conference semifinal baseball game against Southern Mississippi, but he also ran a leg of a 4x100 relay. He then returned to play in the baseball championship game against Cincinnati. The relay team did not place in the event, but the FSU track team was the overall conference champion, and the baseball team won the conference title as well. Which teams did Deion start his pro sports career with? With Deion, he already had gotten drafted to the pros in 1985, but declined. In 1988, Deion would once again get drafted to the major leagues. In the 30th round of the MLB draft, Deion was drafted by the New York Yankees. Deion signed this deal. Also in the 1989 NFL draft, Deion was drafted to the Atlanta Falcons, but had some contract issues with the Falcons. Deion used his contract with the Yankees to gain leverage against the Falcons and their contract dispute. During the 1989 season, he hit a major league home run and scored a touchdown in the NFL in the same week, becoming the only player ever to do so. Sanders is also the only man to play in both a Super Bowl and a World Series. Which other multi-sport athlete could stand shoulder to shoulder with Deion? Did this player ever face Deion in a game? In the late 80s, everyone knew who Bo Jackson was, because his face was everywhere. Bo was also a multi-sport athlete who also played football and baseball at the same time. Many fans wondered if they would ever see Deion and Bo face each other. Both athletes were playing the same sports at a very high level. But fans got their wish in 1990 for a 5-game series in baseball, the most memorable of which came on July 17th, in what was billed the Bo and Primetime Show. After Bo Jackson's 3-homer night, Sanders said, "Bo is one of the best athletes who ever put on a uniform." Deion also commented on something that Bo had said about playing both sports, and towards the end of Deion's career, he completely understood the Bo Jackson statement. The famous statement was, "Football is my wife and baseball is my mistress." How can Deion sustain access in both baseball and football? Deion had some disagreements with some of the Yankees management and was released. In 1991, he was signed by the Atlanta Braves. Being that Deion was already playing for the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, playing for the Braves and the MLB in the same city could help Deion balance being able to play for both teams. This move by Deion would prove to be a successful one. In the very next season, Deion led the National League in triples and helped the Braves make it to the 1992 World Series. Despite the effort that Deion showed in the World Series, the Braves lost to the Blue Jays in 6 games. In the following years, Deion would be traded and moved to more teams in the majors. Such teams were the Reds and Giants. Deion's playing time with these teams was very limited, consequently his stats suffered as a result. How good of a football player was Deion Sanders, aka Prime Time? Did he have more success in football than he did in baseball? Deion was drafted 5th overall by the Atlanta Falcons. He was drafted to be a Swiss Army knife of a player for the Falcons. Deion delivered on that expectation, but it had a shaky start. On the first attempt at a punt return, Deion fumbled the ball, but he got bailed out by a penalty. As a Falcon, Deion would have 24 interceptions, with 7 happening in the 1993 season. Deion also led the league in punt return yards that season. Early on, he was proving to the NFL how dynamic of a player he was. Much like how Deion played in the same city in both sports teams, he continued to follow that trend later into his career. Eventually, Deion was playing for the San Francisco Giants baseball team, and having to always go cross-country to play baseball would be tiresome. So, in 1994, Deion decided to sign with the San Francisco 49ers. He would have one of the best seasons as a football player during his first season with the Niners. Deion in that season would intercept 6 passes and return 3 of them for touchdowns. But that wasn't the astonishing part of this accomplishment. He would set an NFL record with net return yards after interception with over 300 return yards. Deion would continue his successful season by capturing the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. It still was not the best part of Deion's season. The Niners went to the Super Bowl and faced off against the San Diego Chargers. Deion had an interception for a touchdown in a victorious effort. This victory would capture Deion's first Super Bowl championship. After that Super Bowl, the Niners and Sanders parted ways, and Sanders was looking for a new landing spot. He eventually landed with the Dallas Cowboys. At the time of Deion's arrival in Dallas, they were highly considered the favorite to win the Super Bowl. With desires on winning back-to-back titles, it was Deion's decision to sign at the time the most expensive contract ever given to a cornerback. Deion and the Cowboys would go on to defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 30. Deion would play for the Cowboys for the next 4 seasons before going to the Washington Redskins. After 1 season with the Redskins, he would retire, but that wasn't the end of his playing career. In the 2004 season, Deion would come out of retirement and play for the Ravens. He played for 2 seasons before hanging up his cleats for a clipboard. Deion would go on to coaching football at Southern University, then eventually move on to the Colorado Buffaloes. How much history has Deion made by playing both sports? Deion Sanders is the only man to play in a Super Bowl and a World Series. He also hit an MLB home run and scored an NFL touchdown in the same week. He also had a reception and an interception in the Super Bowl. He is one of 7 players to win back-to-back Super Bowls with different teams. He is also one of 2 players to score an NFL touchdown 6 different ways: interception return, punt return, kickoff return, receiving, rushing, and fumble recovery. In sports, you can find so many different characters, and Deion was no different. Not only did he flash on the field, but he was flashy off the field. His primetime nickname was given to him by a friend and high school teammate, Florida Gators defensive back Richard Fain. The two played pickup basketball games together during the primetime television hour, and Sanders' athletic display during those games earned him the nickname. His other nicknames are Lil Nicky for comparing himself with NCAA coaching great Nick Saba and Neon Deion. Deion was a record breaker, trendsetter, and overall role model for many athletes that have come after him. There is no doubt that Deion has done so much for both sports, and many times when athletes try their hand at 2 different sports, they usually fail at one of them. Deion thrived at both sports and made history in both. Thank you for watching this episode of Football Craze. Please join us again.